Welcome to another episode of Theater Corner. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. Today we're broadcasting from the 51st floor of the City Club in Los Angeles, California. Theater Corner is an interview series created as an ongoing effort to promote more diverse interest and involvement in the theater scene. So silence your cell phones, folks. You're about to enter Theater Corner. Dominique Morisseau is a prominent force in the American theater scene whose work is bringing the richness and complexity of the Black American experience into the spotlight. Morisseau got her start as a performance poet in her hometown Detroit and began writing while she was studying acting at the University of Michigan. Her writing career flourished after moving to New York City, and she is now one of America's most produced playwrights with a rapidly expanding list of prestigious awards, honors, and fellowships to her name. Morisseau is a co-producer for the hit Showtime series Shameless and has written a substantial body of plays, including her award-winning trilogy, The Detroit Project. The first play, Detroit 67, takes place during the riots and rebellions of 1967. The second, Paradise Blue, explores the city's jazz community in 1949. The third play, Skeleton Crew, focuses on a group of auto workers during the Great Recession of 2008 and is currently playing at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego. On this edition of Theater Corner, we're honored to welcome the exceptionally talented and accomplished Dominique Morisseau to talk about art, activism, and the power of community. And here we are, Dominique Morisseau.
Yes.
Welcome to Theater Corner. We are so privileged to have you here.
Awesome.
And thank you for braving the traffic here in Los Angeles to come join us here in Theater Corner. Really appreciate it. And I know there's some viewers that are recognizing this right away, that you are not wearing hoop earrings. I know it's been spotted.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us why this rare moment that you're not wearing hoop earrings.
Well, today is 4/21, and that is the anniversary of Prince's death. So I will take off my hoops for Prince.
There we go.
Prince deserves his own earrings, so this is in honor of the late great purple one.
Okay, that's a very good reason.
Yeah.
Wow, it's been a year already.
That's right.
It's unbelievable. So here in Theater Corner, we would, since we have you here, it's quite an honor. Let's start talking about your writing, which is quite phenomenal.
Thank you.
Because it really is. And we know writers have their own unique style and such. Maybe you could tell us about the creative processes behind your trilogy that you wrote about Detroit.
Okay, absolutely. You know, I started writing a 3-play cycle about my hometown because I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And it must have been like 7 or 8 years ago now that I was doing a study of Pearl Clegg's work. And you know, Pearl Clegg's, her father, Albert Clegg, was a reverend in Detroit, Michigan. But so she's a writer, she's a playwright, a novelist, essayist from Detroit. And I was reading her work as an actor. And we were studying her plays back to back, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so amazing to see someone's body of work and to learn their voice and what's important to them through their body of work. So I was very excited to learn about her through her work. And also to see how much she really wrote the rhythm and blues of the way that Black women speak. And I hadn't quite experienced enough work that had done that for me. So I was moved by her. So then I took it upon myself. I'm going to try again. I'm going to read someone else's body of work. And I went to August Wilson. And I was familiar with August's work, obviously, as a theater artist. But I had never read his plays back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did, I got really inspired by how much he captured the rhythm and blues and the jazz of the way of his Pittsburgh community. And I thought, man, when people from Pittsburgh see this man's work, they must feel so affirmed and valuable and immortalized in his writing. And I want to do that for Detroit. Also because Detroit has a very, if you leave out the writers and the poets and the musicians from the city, the people you're left with who are writing about the city are journalists. And they're not always writing about us favorably or fairly or with love. And so I thought Detroit needs some homegrown narrators to continue to tell the story of who the people really are. And so that's what inspired me to want to write 3 plays that take place in 3 particular eras that I think change the landscape of our city.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Give into the city. And so these 3 plays take place in the distant past and the not so distant past, but it still seems to resonate with the present. In writing these plays, how did you hope that it would touch or challenge your audiences?
I honestly, at first, I didn't actually write from a perspective of really thinking about audience. I actually wrote from a perspective of thinking about the actual people that I wanted to explore. So it started from the inside out, I guess, in a way. Me wanting to learn about my history myself, wanting to know, I'd heard about Detroit 1949. There was this area of Detroit called Paradise Valley. And, if you're young and your grandparents lived through that era. And so I'd heard about it, but I didn't know much about it. So it started from me wanting to learn about my city. And I think that in the same thing with the 1967 rebellion riots that happened, where I had heard that our city had riots, but most of us in my generation didn't know anything about it. And so I just wanted to learn about it. What happened during that time period? I didn't know that play would become a current play, even though it's about 1967.
Right.
I think that speaks a lot more to how society has now progressed and things that have not been addressed fully more than it speaks to anything about me as a writer, But I'm happy to have my work be relevant and to be current on some level. I'm happy that something I wrote still speaks to something that's happening that can bring some sort of understanding and, get some more social dialogue around it. And with the third play, The Auto Industry, again, I'm someone who I grew up not in the auto industry, but curious about it and the world of it, and I wanted to see that world on stage. I like to see things on stage that I haven't ever seen before. So I go, oh my gosh, I want to see what's a Detroit 1967 red light basement party? I want to know what that looks like on a stage,
Right.
And I felt the same way about a factory. I said, I've never seen an auto industry, a factory on stage. And even though Skeleton Crew doesn't necessarily bring the factory in terms of you're not seeing people working the line per se, you're seeing reflections of it, but we're in the break room, a fictional break room of a factory, so that you can see the workers coming in and out of work and hear their day-to-day at work. What's those conversations? What are those what we call the water cooler?
Water cooler, yes.
Conversations, what are those? And
Right.
I want to see that happening at the factory. So what I hope the audience now is, the audience has become the next step for me. When I'm writing the work, what do audiences get to see? And I hope that they just get to connect to the humanity of the characters, and that they are just as fascinated and fall just as in love with these characters as I have. That's what I hope.
I had the pleasure of seeing Skeleton Crew at opening night at the Globe, and that was something that I was thinking about, because all of these families losing jobs at the coal mines, just going empty,
Right.
And so it certainly resonates today.
Yeah.
It's incredible. We just we don't learn. We keep repeating.
That's right.
But with this beautiful writing that you do, you've garnered a long list of awards and fellowships. And just to name a couple, I mean, you're a 2-time NAACP Image Award recipient, and Edward M. Kennedy Prize for Drama, and you were honored from the city of Detroit. You were honored with the Spirit of Detroit Award.
Yeah.
Is there any particular award that kind of had a little bit more meaning for you than any others?
Oh, no.
I know I don't want to say anything bad about any other particular award, but anyone that has a kind of a special sense to it, perhaps.
Well, and I do mean this, they all do in different stages of my life.
Right.
Right? Like, so the NAACP Image Awards, those were so early in my playwriting career. That was when I was, in school. And I was being honored as a playwright at the University of Michigan. And so that was affirming to know that I was speaking beyond my theater department. I think when it comes, I'm just naming the ones that you've named, but the Edward M. Kennedy Prize Award, that was very special to me because it came at a time when Detroit 67, my play, had already been off Broadway. It had done what it had done, and it had gotten the reviews that it had gotten. And it somehow, the Edward M. Kennedy Prize breathed new life into my play. And what made it so significant to me is, I'd been through ups and downs with Detroit 67 as a production and getting the play to get the life that it deserved outside of New York. And what that award did was say that it was first of all, it was chosen by some of the best playwrights in the business.
Wow.
They are on the committee of the Kennedy Prize. And so to have my fellow esteemed writers say this is the play that is the one that we want to honor felt like I was being honored by my peers.
Correct,
really.
yeah.
And then I was being honored by the Kennedy family, and I was being honored by historians that said that I got my play right, that I got this era correct. So that was a big deal for me. And the Spirit of Detroit Award, I mean, my city gave me an award. That's awesome.
Right.
You're always, a prophet is always the last to be honored at home. So what I mean. So you're always like, everyone goes out, or whatever that statement is. I'm not sure that's the exact idiom, but whatever that idiom is that says that you're last to be loved in your hometown. It feels great to finally be honored in my hometown.
Well, they also say don't forget where you came from. It's impossible to forget where you came from now with such an esteemed award. That's beautiful. And so here at Theater Corner, we always discuss diversity and inclusion.
Sure.
And I understand one of your first loves was acting, but it was also writing. But I understand perhaps you found the opportunities perhaps sparse and uninspired, perhaps. So I was wondering, what would you consider some of the most significant challenges for people of color, more specifically women of color in the theater scene today?
That's a long, there's a long answer to that would take up the entire, probably the rest of this interview. Right. But what I could say in brief, if there's a way to be brief about this, at the same time that there are women of color with making more strides than we've made, because that'll always be put out, that there are women of color, and black women particularly, playwrights who are getting their moment in the sun, if you will. But then there's something that happens where one of us only gets a moment at a time, or if this person's play went to Broadway, then that person's play can't go to Broadway, because it's as if we cancel each other out as women. So there's that concern. I think that we're represented sometimes as stories, but we're always isolated from the communities that we come from, so we're plucked. I call it we get cherry picked. We get plucked away, and leave a whole bunch of the rest behind. And I think that that's a concern that I have as an artist, that I want to see more and more women of color, writers become celebrated and studied in school. So I think we're still looking at parity in theater, where how often our plays get produced as opposed to our male counterparts or our white male counterparts. I think we're also looking at what kind of roles we can have beyond the stage. So where are we behind the scenes?
There you go. That's
where are we in the artistic directorships? That
right.
is extremely limited. Where are we? Are we involved in actually producing the work so that we get to be selectors of the work that we're seeing on the stage? And that's where the other half of the big power comes from. And I think we're not seeing parity there at all. And so, we're on the front lines a little bit. You put women playwrights and women of color playwrights in your seasons, you sprinkle us in, and it makes the theater look good, but it's not matching the entire structure of the theater.
I hear you.
And so I think that we have a ways to go with that kind of pushing. And then in the reviewing circuit, the people who get to knight the plays and people who get to sanction the plays, women of color are often under a white male gaze with our work. And so that just leads to a very imbalanced, worldview perspective about our work being written.
This is true.
And that needs to shift, so.
So do you find the theater to be a uniquely powerful driver of social change?
Oh, of course, I absolutely do. And it's funny because, you asked me, I think before, when we were off camera, about how my play cycle about Detroit, for instance, has become, even though there are plays about the past, they've all become sort of current.
Yes.
And I think that that's true pretty much of, I say all plays are about now right now, because you can take a play, you can take, Arthur Miller play or August Wilson. I just saw Jitney on Broadway, and that was taking place in the 70s.
Right.
And or even more, I saw Ma Rainey's Black Bottom at Center Theater Group last year. And I think that play takes place in the 30s.
Right.
And it was like they were talking to us
Certainly.
right now. I say all plays are about right now, because art is important to start dialogue, and so many of the things that people have been talking about and been dealing with socially, economically, in terms of relationship between each other, in terms of race and gender. These things are not, they're very unevolved in some ways. As much as they have evolved in other ways, we find ourselves taking some steps backwards when we try to move forward. And so it makes the art and plays and theater extremely relevant and extremely influential in terms of how shaping our social thought and in terms of how we start to, make progress, social progress. So I absolutely think theater is urgent with social change, and I don't even see how we can exist or have real great change without the arts. So, so absolutely.
That's true.
Yeah.
So you've been in LA for about 3 years or so now.
Yeah.
And how
2.5.
How is that wearing on you, or wearing on you in the sense of clothing? It's how are you fitting in with LA?
I don't know. I'm not sure that I fit in. I'm not sure what fitting into LA means yet. It's a different place than New York. I'm very much a Detroit, New York, Brooklyn girl, and Los Angeles now. There are things that I really do love about, I think what native Los Angeles, what they love about LA, is what I love, when I'm out and about with people who grew up here, the things that they are in love with about, South Los Angeles, for instance, I'd love about it.
Okay.
I'm still learning about the other things.
Well, the weather's a big change.
The weather's the weather, but that's obvious. The weather's the obvious thing, I think. It definitely is a major change, and it changes disposition, I think. It's easier in New York when I'm agitated and I'm setting them down in the dumps, and then it's also below zero outside. That does nothing to help. Out here, I'm agitated and I'm upset. there's the beach.
There you go.
You know, there's a mountain, which I spent a lot of time. My husband is a music artist. I'm a hip hop artist, and sometimes he was in New York when I was out here during the beginning of my move here. And he would call me often and be like, where are you? And I'd be like, I'm in the mountains. And he was like, you turned into a mountain woman.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like,
nothing wrong with that.
that's where to be.
Right.
You know, but he and I have become mountain men and women where we'll just go there. So it has changed, I think, the ability to be around nature.
There you go.
So that's great.
And that's what appeals to California, Southern California to me. That's very much so. But what has you out here is you are the co-producer.
Yeah.
For a Showtime series called Shameless.
Absolutely.
What's that experience like?
It's a ball of fun. I mean,
that's
Shameless
good to hear.
Shameless is a show that pushes the boundaries.
It certainly does.
Not just social boundaries, but your own personal, like prudishness. It pushes the boundaries of your prudishness. And will take a writer like me and, really push me outside of my comfort zone and outside of the box, obviously. And so it's been a delight for me. It was a scary delight for me in the beginning. But this is my third season on Shameless, and I love the writers in the room. They're really smart people that I've learned a lot from, and I have crossed into the boundaries of television, which is a very different thing from theater, and was terrifying for me. And there's also, but with television, obviously, there's things about racial parity and gender parity. I mean, that becomes really illuminated out here because Hollywood is I think theater likes to think of itself as progressive in many ways, that more elevated in some ways, even though I don't think so. I think it has a lot of similarities to Hollywood, but it would not think so of itself, But Hollywood is definitely a little more committed to its old guard and its old ways, And so I think that it takes a little bit more effort out here to push boundary. Whereas in theater, I think people like the exciting idea of pushing boundary,
Right.
In terms of calling out things. Here at Hollywood is a little harder, and so it becomes tougher to navigate. So it's a new hat for me to wear. It's to figure out what kind of person, the person I've become in theater. Real easy. People know what I stand for in theater. That's its own thing. How do I bring that person into Hollywood? And what does that mean for me as a Hollywood artist? That's something I'm still navigating and trying to figure out.
Transition is still in motion there.
That's right.
So, Theater Corner audiences, they're sitting on the edge of their seats to know what you're working on right now. What are you writing now? Is that something that you can share?
Well, I can share things that I have. I have a couple of things that are about to go up, which is I've written a play, Pipeline, and that's going to happen. It hasn't been produced. It's going to be produced this summer at Lincoln Center in New York. It goes up in June, and it runs until the end of August. And it is about, in large ways, it's about the school to prison pipeline.
Okay.
In small ways, it's about a single mother who works in a public school and sends her teenage son to private school, and when an incident happens in that private school that threatens him with expulsion and potential charges, she has to figure out and reconcile with her choices as how she's chosen to send him to the school and what that means for him and how she can save him from the school to prison pipeline. And so that play I'm excited about because I care very much about education, and I'm a former educator. I was raised by a teacher. My mother was a teacher for 40 years, so I'm really excited to delve into that conversation, and especially because we have a lot of stuff has gone on around the Secretary of Education that we have now.
Yes, that's right.
And so I'm looking forward to that being a part of the conversation that happens around my play. And being able to tap into that with the audience is really exciting to me. And then I'm working on a musical. And it goes up at Berkeley Rep this summer as well. It opens, I think, in July, and it opens in August, and it runs the end of August through September and October. And it is called Ain't Too Proud, and it's about the Temptations.
All right.
And so it's a musical with all of the music of the Temptations. And I've been working with Otis Williams is, the last remaining temp of the, classic five. And so I've been working with him and his camp and Des McAnuff, a director who did Jersey Boys, and an amazing creative team. And we're putting together this musical, so.
Wow,
So
I'm
it's
looking forward to
exciting.
that.
Yeah.
It's, I'm gonna have to take a trip to Berkeley.
Yeah, come to Berkeley, or get us back to New York,
Yeah,
That's the goal. So yeah.
All right, so you are phenomenal. You're a sensation. I'm so incredibly proud of what you're doing and the work you're doing, and I can't say that enough. And I appreciate you again for coming here to grace the chairs here at Theater Corner. And I know you gotta get back to things. You're very busy, but I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I'm
All
very
right.
excited to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
And thank you, viewers, for stopping here in Theater Corner. And we'll see you on the next episode.